Oh my god, everyone. Oh my god, can you believe it? Can you believe it? We got a Hux reference in this episode. Oh, gotta love my boy Hux.
As the last day!
Hello, Interwebs, I hope you're all doing well, and I'm here to review the latest and penultimate episode of the third season of Star Wars The Mandalorian, this time Chapter 23, The Spies. And I have to say, I was kind of really feeling down on the show, especially after last week's episode, because for those of you who didn't see my sort of video that I put up earlier this week, after my review last week, I kind of kept thinking about some of the issues from last episode, and it kind of left even more of a sour taste in my mouth the longer that I thought about it. So I was kind of feeling a little bit down on the show, which is why I was very relieved to come into this episode and actually find it to be probably close to, if not the best episode of the season, because there was just a lot of stuff that I really, really enjoyed in this episode. And honestly, I really wish we had kind of gotten to this stage of the story 2 or 3 episodes ago, so that when this episode kicks things into high gear, I'm like, oh, this is where the season's going, because this feels like this should have been the storyline of this season, and really dove into a lot of the meat that is still clearly on the bones of what they're discussing throughout this episode in terms of talking about the rift in the Mandalorian culture and the backstory. Like, it was just a lot of the stuff in this episode was really, really intriguing, and I honestly just wish we had kind of dealt with it a little bit longer, because there's some parts of it I think are a little bit sped past, but that being said, I will take the episode as it is, and I do really think that this was probably the strongest, if not one of the strongest episodes of this season. But let's dive into it. We start off with getting Moff Gideon back, and I will say this is one of those elements where I'm like, I wish we had gotten this earlier, because him just sort of showing up in the penultimate episode here, I was just like, oh man, I did like the build up to him, but I was kind of hoping you'd come back a little bit sooner, so we get a little bit more time with him. So it's just one of those, like, you know, take what you can get, because I adore him in this role. He is great. We finally get the reveal that Kane was indeed working for him, and that she is aware of the Mandalorian sort of working together to sort of protect Navarro, and getting sort of like stopping his plans from kind of destabilizing that area of the outer rim of the galaxy, sort of turning it against the New Republic. And then we get a meeting with Moff Gideon with the rest of the Imperial Remnant Council, and I loved this scene because I find it fascinating. You can like see their plans, and actually all of the stuff that I was talking about literally 2 episodes ago that I was presuming was the Imperial's plan turned out to be the Imperial's plan. The New Republic being overrun with bureaucracy, not really caring for others, and that allows them to sweep in on the resentment towards the Republic and sort of recreate the Empire. And I like the little, like, again, this is Dave Filoni's MO, like seeding little elements to make things make sense in between the different Star Wars movies. So we get reference to Hux, which is clearly a reference to the First Order, and sort of when the Imperial remnants sort of fall down and become the First Order. I do wonder, I need to look at the timeline, so maybe y'all can tell me in the down below. Is this show take place before or after the Battle of Jakku? I'm honestly curious. I actually don't know for sure. So I'm curious if we're building up to that. But they also start to reference Thrawn, who was clearly very clearly announced in Star Wars Celebration this past weekend, where we got the fact that I think Lars Skarsgård, I forget his last name, but the actor who played him in Rebels is going to be playing Thrawn in live action in the Ahsoka show, and that they're building up to some form of movie. The Dave Filoni stuff is building up to one of the movies that he's doing. So really excited to see and hear that, and sort of, again, just starting to see the seeds of that being laid here with that. We also see that Moff Gideon walks by some clone vats, so there's that element, and we sort of hear that like they're still working on clone stuff, but it's sort of delayed for now. So I'm wondering if that's a storyline that they're sort of like pushing off for now, or if they are going to come back to it at some point in the near future to see what was going on with the clone stuff and Grogu, and if they still want to get Grogu. But then we have him sort of giving a speech like, I don't believe Thrawn's coming back, he's gone, vote for me as leader, essentially, is sort of his angle, and he sort of says, well, we can you know, bind together about going after the Mandalorians because we don't want them to rise up. This then brings us over to Navarro, and we get to see the tension of the two different clans of Mandalore coming together and meeting under Bo-Katan. And I like the tension of the setup. My one pitfall with this is I wish we had gotten to see more of Bo-Katan's tribe that she was hanging out with last season, just because I feel like we've gotten a decent sense of who the Mandalorians are from Din's tribe, the former Night Watch folks, I think is kind of what they're called. I don't know exactly what the tribe is called. We've gotten a decent sense of them, which is why I liked them. But we don't give a decent sense of Bo-Katan's tribe. They're just sort of like, faces that we've seen before but don't really know. So it doesn't really work as well for me in terms of the tension because I don't know these characters really all that deeply, which is the one, again, thing that I wish they had spent longer this season building out. But taking again for what this is, I did like that tension build up. We also get Din going to visit his friend the magistrate, and they get to see the Taika droid. Basically, it's like, we don't want to hire Taika Waititi anymore, so let's have little buttons with his voice on it, a little soundboard that Grogu can get into. And I like, again, Din being like an overprotective father's like, he's too young to be working machinery, and Din's like, Grogu's like, yes, and just in Taika Waititi's voice, which was very adorable. And so it allows Grogu to be able to have a little bit more agency in terms of using that, which I thought is a decent way to sort of make IG sort of relevant to the conversation. I was wondering if we were ever going to circle back to that. So, enjoyed that, and then we get this speech by Bo-Katan saying, like, I need a fellowship to come with me to Mandalore, and we get a bunch of volunteers and sort of inspiring to see them come. But then they get to Mandalore, and I like seeing them sort of having a bit of trauma about seeing Mandalore the way it is. Like one of them even saying, I was there. And we have them arrive on the planet and exploring it, and they meet these Mandalorians who are still there, who still believe in Bo-Katan. And I like Bo-Katan at this sort of like dinner that they have, kind of expressing what she went through, about how she did surrender to Moff Gideon in order to try to save the Mandalorian's life, but didn't help. They still did the Scourge of Mandalore anyways, and that's why she lost the Darksaber, because she surrendered to Moff Gideon, and so she was humiliated, and Moff Gideon rightfully earned the Darksaber, and yet he still did what he did anyways, which is absolutely horrible, but fits his character, and you see why that weighs on her, and why, she sort of sees it as selfish. But I like Din sort of reframing as like, I will serve you. And there was the announcement at Star Wars Celebration this past weekend that they don't see the Mandalorian being Din necessarily anymore, the titular Mandalorian, but it's a moving target in terms of the character. And I feel as much more like it's applying to, Bo-Katan at this moment as the lead of the show. It really has shifted to her really more as the lead, and you can see that with Din sort of taking second fiddle to her. And that's fine. I'm liking this element of the story. And then they get sort of into a fight over like a chess game. And again, I didn't hate this. I just wish we had a little bit more ties to these characters, especially on Bo-Katan's tribe side, because I would be a little bit more invested in the fight. But it was relevant. I like Grogu stopping it, and Din's like, that wasn't me. And I'm sort of sitting here being like, was that a Luke thing, or was that something that Grogu just did himself? And I want to lean more towards Grogu is trying to be that sort of like, no, fight, stop, and come together. And I love earlier Bo-Katan's discussion about like no more petty squabbles. The problem with Mandalore is we were always just fighting amongst ourselves. We need to come together and become something greater. Always a message that I love to hear. My Star Trek heart is fluttering hearing that. So I enjoyed that. But then they get attacked by a kaiju monster and go underground, and they get ambushed by the Empire, or the Imperial remnants. I love their outfits, like their new, like, I think it's Beskar armor or whatever. It looked really cool. I loved the designs. They have jetpacks. The battle sequences are great. And I like Moff Gideon finally coming in and confronting them and saying, hey, I'm going to confront you and say, I steal everything from different cultures. Kind of very Thrawn-like to a degree, though Thrawn does more with art. And Gideon says, I take from different cultures. I'm going to try and become the best. And it fits like a fascist mindset, right? We steal from different cultures and take what we want and sort of scourge from it. Very more imperialist than fascist, those two ideals dovetail quite nicely sometimes. And so I like that as a sort of thing. And I love that the Mandalorian's like, nah, this is the way. They don't even have to say anything, and Bo-Katan just goes running, and it kind of is like her refuting the choice that she made earlier in her life, where she had surrendered to Moff Gideon, and they're like, no, we're not going to let you do this again. We're going to stand against him. And I like that they managed to get out and get away using the Darksaber, but Moff Gideon is ultimately able to either kill or capture the big guy from the tribe. I forget his name, the father of the kid. from a few episodes ago, get kidnapped by the giant winged thing. He went down fighting. He went down fighting, like battling those 3 red, like Emperor style guards. I thought was really cool. So yeah, no, this was a solid episode. It set up a lot of like different ideas and themes, and sort of like delving more into the Mandalorians and sort of setting a goal for the season. My only problem with this episode really is I just wish it had come 2 or 3 episodes earlier. But as a sort of palate cleanser after last episode, which again was an episode that like I liked elements of, but the more I thought about it, the more I had problems with it. This was a nice one coming off of that. Oh, also, by the way, I should mention, because people called me out for it, very rightfully so, that I recognized Christopher Lloyd and Jack Black last episode as a cameo. I didn't recognize Lizzo. That's just because I don't know Lizzo. Nothing against Lizzo. I'm not a music person, really, at all. You give me a billion, like, nerdy references, nerdy movies, things like that. Like, I will talk to you about movies, not even nerdy ones. I'll just talk to you about movies and TV shows all day long. Show me anyone from pop music, or I don't even know if Lizzo is even considered pop music, but like well-known musicians, like some of the most well-known musicians at all. I know nothing. So, no offense to Lizzo. I've heard some of her stuff here and there. I'm sure she's fantastic. I know she can play the flute amazingly, which is awesome. That sounds killer, but I just don't know her. That's just where my pop culture knowledge very much ends. So yeah, shout out to Lizzo, but yeah, that was just something that people called me out on. Rightfully so. Should have known her, but I didn't. That's everything that I have for this episode. I thought this was a great one. I'm excited for the finale. This has been a weird up and down season overall, but I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. I hope you're all doing well, and as always, my friends, live long and prosper.